Jesus still loves me, and he still loves you too. And that's why I've started this YouTube channel, because some people just can't believe that that's true. They can't believe that God would still love someone like me. And I'm okay with that because I know that that's not true. What's worse is there are people who believe that God couldn't love someone just like them. And that's just not true. And sometimes people like me and maybe like you who are keenly aware of our own sinfulness and our own shortcomings, sometimes we need a reminder that God still loves us. Here's something that's true, that sin doesn't cause God to stop loving you, at least not according to the Bible. Romans 5 verse 20, it says that God demonstrates his love for us in that while we're yet sinners, Jesus died for us. While we're sinners, God still loves us, and he expresses that love for us by dealing with our sinfulness through Jesus. Our sin doesn't scare God away from us. It causes him to act on our behalf. And before you suggest that maybe you've done too much, or if I understood just what you've done, you need to know that just later in the same chapter, later in Romans 5, in verse 20, it says that where the sin abounds, grace superabounds. What that means is we will never out-sin God's grace. We'll never out-sin God's ability to forgive us. So Jesus still loves me, and he still loves you too. Too many people believe a good news message that isn't really good enough to be called good news. The good news that the Bible teaches us is bigger and better than you can ever imagine, and it's big enough and good enough for you. Coming out of my first video, I received some feedback that I was unrepentant and unqualified for this sort of thing. I just want to take a few moments to talk about those two things, to respond to them. Number one, I don't think that I'm unrepentant. At least I know very clearly that I made some selfish choices, some selfish behavior that hurt many, many people. And if you're one of those people, then I would say, I'm sorry. I apologize to you personally. So that's the first thing. The second is that I'm unqualified for this sort of thing because of the choices and the decisions I made. And I would, on one hand, I would say that's absolutely true. I am unqualified, but we're all unqualified. I've always been unqualified to communicate this kind of good news with anyone. But the Bible also tells me in Romans 5, in that same chapter, in verse 17 and 18, that Jesus qualifies us, that we are unqualified because of our sin and our selfishness and the choice we make. We're unqualified, but he qualifies us. He gives to us the gift of righteousness and makes us right. He qualifies us for this sort of thing and everything else. Righteousness is always a gift given by God. It's never earned, and it's always given by God to sinners, so you can never lose it by sinning. I've disqualified myself, but Jesus has qualified me. And now, as someone who's so deeply impacted by the grace of God, I just want to share it with as many people as possible, specifically with people who find themselves in a situation like I find myself in. If that interests you, then I would encourage you to keep coming back. And if it doesn't, then maybe this channel isn't for you. I hope what I shared today has encouraged someone, and I hope that I've helped someone remember that God loves them.